going on, guys? Connor Hansen from Performance Training here with
Adam Cook.
We're going to talk a little bit about back pain today, because I think just about anybody and everybody suffers with it in one time or another in their life. So we're going to talk about some of the things you can do to fix it, maybe causes, maybe some remedies, things like that. So I'll give you guys a quick story. I'll make it real fast. I've had back pain for about three or so years now. I was squatting way more than I should have. I was pride lifting at Vasa, and it's a terrible thing to do. And my pelvis tilted under a little bit, did what's called the butt wink. At the bottom, I didn't have hamstring mobility, so I did the butt wink. Got some herniated discs, got a cortisone shot to cool down the sciatica, which is that fiery pain down your leg, in the back of your leg that can kind of wrap into your calf sometimes. And got a infection from that shot. So I developed what's called osteomyelitis. It's a bone infection. It's pretty rare, except for in intravenous drug users, which I am not. And actually happens in the older and infants. So like my age group, it was like astronomical that I got this thing.
A healthy, athletic man,
right. And so I got a PICC line, which is like an IV that it's like a tube that sticks out of your arm, and I was able to give myself antibiotics, 4 big bags of antibiotics every day, which messed up my digestive system, so that's a whole nother issue. And I was paralyzed. Before we figured out what it was, I was paralyzed. I was on all these Percocet and like all this stuff to try to fix me, because the doctors had no idea, and so I had to get an MRI to figure out what was going on. My wife had to like tie my shoes, and this was when we first got married, and so it was, already having the struggles of newlyweds, and now I'm immobile, can barely work, and she has to like help me get dressed in the morning. It was just terrible. So then I got the IV, fixed it. I know I said this is gonna be a short story, but it was like my life for like forever. So. But now, got rid of it, and since then have been trying to figure out, why my back pain is still hurt, or why my back is still hurting. And I've come to a couple conclusions which I think plague a good amount of desk jockeys, people that, don't have a very active jobs, that sit in a desk for long periods of time, which I would say that's 90% of America.
Yeah.
And you actually now.
Yeah. Guilty.
You get guilty as charged.
So part of part of the reason, in fact, how I got into training way at the beginning is I actually had sciatica as well. I had,
really?
I won't go into the whole details.
Right.
It's kind of a funny story. Maybe I'll tell some other time. But
okay.
Essentially, I was reading a lot in bed, and I had, I already suffered from.
Kind of tilt of the pelvis.
Yeah, what was that? Posterior.
Right.
So my hips would be kind of tucked under, bad hamstring mobility, kind of stressing the lumbar that way.
Right.
And I developed sciatica, and it was, I was like 23, maybe 24. So yeah, I mean, kind of related to the back pain. Obviously nothing like yourself,
right.
but
So you can relate.
Everybody's had it.
Yeah, everybody's had it. And when we say sciatica, if you don't know, it comes from so you have the sciatic nerve that goes down your spine, and it comes out kind of in your lower hips area, and travels, so it goes down and it splits and it goes through your legs. And
you sounded like an old person when you were telling your story, right? You were laid up in bed.
My wife's tying my shoes. I'm paralyzed.
And I had it where when a storm would come in, I would feel that down my freaking leg, like an old person too. So
yeah. And so what happens if that nerve, if that sciatic nerve gets pinched in any way, like, if there's inflammation, if your vertebrae are out of alignment or anything like that, it ggets pinched, it sends that fiery pain down either in your buttocks or your legs. Or
There's actually a syndrome too. I don't know if you're familiar with sciatic syndrome, where the nerve goes through the piriformis muscle. If that muscle, you probably don't even have to have inflammation, but especially if it gets inflamed, that you'll have that pain all the time. And I think it affects 10% of the population.
I think 10 or 15%.
My father-in-law was one of those 10%, so you don't hear it about a lot, but they can fix it. But
surgery and things like that. But but a way to help that sciatica is it comes from a pinched nerve or anything like that, or even if you have other types of back pain. I would say 9 times out of 10, back pain comes from muscle imbalances. And whenever I get a new client, I put them through a movement assessment to see what muscles are tight, what muscles are loose or underactive, and if they have back pain. And most of the time, I'd say 9 times out of 10, having back pain comes from an instability in your core, your glutes not firing the way that they should, your deep muscles in your core, your deep ab stabilizers, the transverse abdominis, the deep abdominal wall, your diaphragm, things like that aren't working properly, or they're shut off completely. And something that you remember, Elliot Hulse. We both subscribed to Elliot Hulse's old methods, I think, a little bit before he got into the newer gym. He talked about, and he really believes in nutrition, and I've done a couple of I've looked into some researches about that if you have a crappy nutrition, right, then your intestines inflame a little bit, your stomach inflames, and the muscles, your transverse abdominis, holds all that in. That's going to get inflamed as well. And so then it's going to turn off your deep abdominal stabilizers and some of those muscles that keep your spine where it should be.
Right.
And then weight can move it around and balance it.
People out there will probably relate when you eat like a crappy meal and you think, I'm so full, I feel bloated, right? It could be that your colon is inflamed from this crappy food, and those muscles are shutting off, and you're actually not able to hold your guts in, essentially. As gross as that sounds, it's really common.
Right. And so when the muscles of the core turn off and your glutes turn off, because we sit on them all day, right? When you foam roll, it tends to turn off those muscles, or it helps to relax them. But essentially you're foam rolling all day on your glutes because you're just sitting on them, putting pressure on them. And so your glutes turn off, your abs turn off, and with your glutes turned off, your hamstrings are like, I'll take over, so then your hamstrings get really tight, your low back gets really tight, and then you have what's called the lower cross syndrome, where it's kind of like the Donald Duck posture, right, where the pelvis is tilted anteriorly.
Right. So if you think of your hips as like a bowl, you're talking about a bowl full of water, that bowl's spilling forward. Right.
Exactly.
That's where I was one of the few people with the other way, right? Spilling out the back, so like a flat back.
Yeah. Right. Having a flat back, or no bum, where the back just goes straight to calves.
I had no bum.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a good place to start is to do deep stabilizing core exercises, such as stomach vacuums or planks, side planks, things like that.
Yeah, the vacuums are huge, and you should learn how to vacuum really when you do any exercise, right? Every move can be a core move, especially if you're new to the gym, right? Build those deep muscles up. And if you're doing a plank and your belly is sagging towards the floor, your low back's kinked, don't do a plank.
You're doing it wrong. Yep. And so doing ab work, not working the show muscles, the rectus abdominis, but the deep abdominal muscles, and then doing glute bridges and squats, like correct squats with the knees pointed out, pushing those knees out. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of the glute bridge. You can build up some good core strength there. And then anything off your back, like dead bugs. I don't know if you're familiar with those.
Yeah, dead bugs.
So kind of plays.
There's one called like Happy Baby, kind of the same type of thing.
Yeah, if you exercise and you don't spend any time on the floor, I know it seems weird, but just get on the ground sometimes and do some core work that way. I mean, how often are you rolling around on the ground? Most adults probably not really at all,
unless you got kids, then a little bit more. But and so if you do have back pain, I think stretching your hamstrings is a great place to start. But don't do it in a way that's going to crank your back at all. So stretching your hamstrings, stretching what's called the psoas, and doing like the couch stretch or the lunge stretch. You can find all these online. But.
So hamstrings, like an L-sit would be what to maybe Google, and then the couch stretch, like you said.
L-sit or the couch stretch or psoas stretch. Psoas is with a P. P-S-O-A-S.
Yep.
S-O-A-S. Psoas. Yeah, I got you.
Psoas.
Yeah, psoas. So doing those two stretches will be huge, and then doing glute bridges and deep abdominal stabilizing exercises.
And that's all really that low core, right? So even if you have low back pain, right? If you're sitting at your desk all day, what I noticed too is that thoracic spine, so your upper back, right, from above your low back, kind of that mid back up to your shoulders, mobilizing that can really take away the low back pain all the time.
Yeah, I had a client who was suffering from low back pain, and I was looking at her upper back. There was no mobility at all.
So then the low back compensates, and it's really, there's movement available in the lumbar spine.
It should be a structured, solid joint.
Yeah, most of your
thoracic spine should be moving.
Right, so any flexion or rotation should really be coming from up high.
Yeah, and that brings up a great topic that maybe we could cover later on, but there are joints that should be mobile, the shoulders, and then there are joints that should be, there's movement, but they're a little bit more fixed, like the elbow. The elbow works in one range of motion, but then you got the wrist, which goes crazy, and the shoulder that goes crazy.
Yeah, and typically you're going to have a joint that can move a lot of directions. And the next one up the chain will be more of a hinge.
Exactly. And then the one right above that, same thing. You got the ankle moves in so many different directions. Then you got the knee, really one direction.
Ideally.
Right. Unless you hyperextend it or, then you got problems. And then you got your hips that are way more mobile.
So, any of those mobile ones, like ankles especially, like most people really lack a lot of ankle mobility. So then the knee's going to compensate. Right. Same way that the spine, like we're talking about, right? So you want anything that's really should work one way, you want it to work that one way.
Right.
And then something that should be mobile should be mobilized.
And mobility plays a huge role in it. We talked a little bit in previous videos, but mobility, like ankle mobility, prevents you from getting into a proper squat, right? And then your body, because it can't get into a proper squat, will then recruit muscles that shouldn't be recruited, or throw the knee forward, which puts excess strain on the patella tendon, and just all these things that could just come from stretch your calves for 2 minutes before you do some squats, and that will change the depth of the squat, the muscles utilized, everything.
Just gonna throw this out there. We didn't talk about this, but an assessment would go a long ways in something like this, right? You said you assess all your clients, so if you guys are watching, maybe contact Connor, shoot him a video. I'm sure he could make an arrangement to maybe, that's all you need is a video. You don't have to make it in here to performance training. You're welcome to.
Love to.
Yeah.
Come on in.
But that might be a cool way to help some people out.
Seriously. You can email those at performancetrainingutah@gmail.com. Just put your name, your contact info, and then submit a video of you doing some squats or, even just you working out. And I can usually tell from that, and then from what I see, I can ask for more specific, hands overhead, do a squat, or those types of things that I put people through over here. So that'd be sweet. Comment, subscribe, all the great things that help out the channel. If you want us to answer, if you have any questions or anything like that you want us to answer in later videos, put those in the comments down below.
Comment, critique.
Yep. All those great things.
Love.
Check us out on Instagram at Performance Training Utah. Emails performancetrainingutah@gmail.com, and our website's performancetrainingutah.com.
We'll see you later.